Hello, everyone, and welcome to 60 Nightmares. I'm your storyteller tonight, here to guide you into the shadows. I know many of you drift off to sleep while listening, so before we begin, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Tell me, where are you watching from, and what time is it for you right now? Now settle in. Let the world outside fade away, because the nightmares are waiting, and it all begins right here. Story number 1. In the quiet, misty town of Blackwood Falls, nestled deep in the forests of Maine, I, Ethan Carter, was known as the preacher. Some called me Reverend Ethan, though I never sought the title. I was just a man, trying to atone for a past steeped in darkness. My story begins on an evening after the sunset prayer in the old wooden church at the heart of town. I was approached by my mentor, Reverend Samuel, and my friend, Pastor Daniel. Their faces were grave, and I could sense the weight of their words before they even spoke. Reverend Samuel, his voice trembling slightly, told me he was leaving town for a few days. He needed me to do something only I could handle. My heart sank when he mentioned Lucas. Reverend Samuel told me Lucas had grown even more dangerous. The town could no longer bear his tyranny. Lucas had to be stopped. I protested, reminding Reverend Samuel of our history, of the darkness that once bound us. But Reverend Samuel's eyes were resolute. You are the only one who can face him, Ethan. You know what he is capable of. You know the secrets of his power. I reluctantly agreed. I trusted Reverend Samuel, and his words were a command to me. We agreed that I would confront Lucas as soon as Reverend Samuel left town. The prayer ended, but my mind was far from at peace. I returned home, where my wife Grace greeted me. I couldn't bring myself to eat or speak. I locked myself in my study, praying for strength. I knew the task ahead was heavy, but I never imagined it would drag me back to the days I wanted to forget. The next day, after Reverend Samuel left, I made my way to Lucas's house. It was an old, decaying mansion on the outskirts of town. The sight of it made my heart clench. The windows were dark, and the air around it felt heavy, as if the very ground was cursed. I knocked on the rusted iron door. It creaked open on its own, as if inviting me into a nightmare. Inside, the house was a large hall where people waited to see Lucas. To the right was a small room where his assistant, Martha, sat. She greeted me with a sinister smile. "Welcome, Reverend Ethan. Lucas has been expecting you." I followed her down a narrow corridor. With every step, the air grew thicker, and a choking scent of incense filled my lungs. When I finally entered Lucas's chamber, he was sitting on a large chair, his eyes filled with malice and amusement. "Ethan, my brother, what brings you here?" I tried to hide my disgust. "Cut the act, Lucas. You know why I'm here. Reverend Samuel sent me." Lucas laughed, a cold, hollow sound. "Ah, Samuel, always the righteous one. But you, Ethan, you're not so different from me. You just hide behind your prayers." I clenched my fists. "I'm nothing like you. I turned away from that life." Lucas leaned forward. "Did you? Or are you just waiting for the right moment to fall back into the darkness?" I ignored his taunts. "Reverend Samuel warned you. Your reign of terror ends now." Lucas smirked. "Or what? You'll cast me out? You don't have the power, Ethan. Not without the books." The books. The cursed grimoires our father had left behind, filled with dark incantations and forbidden knowledge. Lucas had always coveted them, and I had hidden them away, guarded by a powerful jinni. I left Lucas's house, my mind racing. I knew I had to act fast, but as I walked home, I felt a strange dizziness. My vision blurred, and suddenly I was in a dark, smoky room. The walls were covered in strange symbols, and in the center stood Lucas, his eyes glowing with an unnatural light. "Welcome to my domain, brother," he sneered. I tried to move, but my body was paralyzed. Lucas began a dark ritual, chanting words that sent chills down my spine. I saw shadows moving around him, whispering in a language I once understood. I woke up with a start, drenched in sweat. It was just a dream, but it felt too real. I rushed home, only to find Grace lying on the floor, unconscious. Panic seized me. I called for help, but it was too late. Grace was gone, poisoned by a cursed gift sent by Lucas. Grief and rage consumed me. I knew Lucas was behind this. He wanted to break me, to drag me back into the darkness, but I refused to give in. I locked myself in my study, praying for guidance. The next day, I went to see Emily, a childhood friend who had recently returned to town. She was the only one I could trust. I told her everything about Lucas, the books, and Grace's death. She listened, her eyes filled with sorrow and determination. "Ethan, you can't fight him alone. You need help," she said. I shook my head. "There's no one else. Reverend Samuel is gone, and the townsfolk are too afraid." Emily grabbed my hand. "Then let me help you. We'll find a way to stop Lucas, together." But as we talked, I noticed something strange about Emily. Her smile was too knowing, her eyes too cold. Suddenly, she lunged at me, her face twisting into something inhuman. "Fool, did you really think I was Emily?" Her voice was a chorus of whispers, and I realized the truth. This was Mammon, a powerful demon in disguise. Lucas had sent her to deceive me. I barely escaped, my mind reeling. I knew then that Lucas was more dangerous than I had imagined. He was willing to sacrifice anyone, even the innocent, to get what he wanted. I returned home, my heart heavy with grief and fear. I knelt in my study, praying for strength. I knew what I had to do. I had to destroy the books, the source of Lucas's power. But as I reached for them, I hesitated. The books were cursed, protected by dark forces. Destroying them wouldn't be easy. Suddenly, I heard a voice behind me. "Ethan, don't do it." I turned to see Reverend Samuel, weak but alive. He had returned, just in time. "Lucas tried to kill me," he said, "but God protected me. Now, we must stop him together." With Reverend Samuel's help, I gathered my strength. We returned to Lucas's mansion, ready to face him once and for all. The house was eerily silent, the air thick with the scent of incense and darkness. We found Lucas in his chamber, surrounded by the cursed books, chanting a dark incantation. "Lucas," I shouted, "it ends now." Lucas turned to us, his eyes glowing with malice. "You're too late, brother. I've already won." But Reverend Samuel stepped forward, his voice strong and steady. He began to recite verses from the Holy Book, his words filling the room with light. The shadows around Lucas began to writhe, and his face twisted in pain. "No," Lucas screamed. "This isn't possible." But it was. The light grew brighter, and Lucas's body began to crumble, consumed by the very darkness he had embraced. The books burned, their cursed pages turning to ash. As the light faded, I fell to my knees, exhausted but at peace. Lucas was gone, his reign of terror finally over. But the cost had been high. Grace was gone, and the scars of our battle would remain forever. Reverend Samuel placed a hand on my shoulder. "It's over, Ethan. You've done what was right." I nodded, tears in my eyes. But at what cost? Reverend Samuel smiled sadly. "The cost of redemption is always high, but you have saved this town, Ethan, and that is a victory worth fighting for." Story number 2. Growing up in the quiet, misty swamps of Cypress Hollow, Louisiana, my family always warned me about the strange and terrifying things that lurked in the darkness. They'd say, "Don't go near the bayou at night, or the swamp hag will drag you under," or "Brush your teeth before bed, or the tooth snatcher will smell your breath and break your teeth. As a kid, I believed every word, except for one story. The story of Old Man Harker. Old Man Harker was a tall, gaunt figure with wild, unkempt gray hair and sunken, glowing eyes. He walked barefoot, wearing tattered clothes no matter the season. The townsfolk whispered that he was cursed, a man who had made a pact with something dark and became something inhuman. But what if I told you Old Man Harker was real? Stay tuned. This true scary story will send chills down your spine. One afternoon, my friends and I were playing near the bayou, kicking around a soccer ball. That's when we saw him, Old Man Harker, standing under the cypress trees, watching us. I decided to tease him, kicking the ball in his direction. He stopped, turned, and stared at me with those hollow, glowing eyes. My friends ran away, but I stood my ground, smirking. He didn't say a word, just stared. Then, in a cold, raspy voice, he said, "Your time will come, Jake Carter." I laughed it off. But that night, I had a nightmare so vivid it felt real. Old Man Harker's words echoed in my head. "Your time will come." Would you have teased Old Man Harker? Comment below. That night, I dreamed I was standing by the bayou. Old Man Harker was there, but this time, he wasn't alone. Shadows moved around him, whispering in a language I couldn't understand. I woke up screaming, my heart pounding. But when I opened my eyes, I saw a dark figure standing at the foot of my bed. It wasn't human. Its eyes glowed red, and it smiled, a smile that sent ice through my veins. The figure lunged at me, but I couldn't move. I was paralyzed, my body frozen in terror. Eerie whispers and a slow, pounding heartbeat filled the room. Have you ever seen something in your room at night? Tell us in the comments. The next day, I told my father everything. He took me to Pastor Samuel, a local religious leader known for his wisdom and strength against dark forces. Pastor Samuel listened, his face grave. "Jake," he said, "Old Man Harker isn't human anymore. He's a vessel. A man who sold his soul to something dark, and now they're using him to torment you." Pastor Samuel gave me a small silver cross and told me to recite Psalm 23 every night before bed. But it was too late. Old Man Harker had already marked me. Would you have gone to a pastor for help? Let us know. That night, I went to Old Man Harker's shack near the bayou. The door creaked open as if inviting me in. Inside, the air was thick with the stench of decay and something older, something evil. I found him in the center of the room, surrounded by lit candles and strange symbols drawn on the floor. His eyes were completely black. "You shouldn't have come," he hissed. Then the shadows around him began to move. I recited the verses Pastor Samuel had taught me. Old Man Harker screamed as the shadows writhed, his body crumbling into dust. Loud chanting, thunder, and the sound of something crumbling filled the air. What would you have done if you saw this? Comment below. After that night, things returned to normal. Or so I thought. 2 weeks later, my son Liam began acting strangely. He stopped sleeping, spent hours in the bathroom, and started stealing raw meat from the kitchen. My wife and I were terrified. We recognized the signs. Old Man Harker's curse had passed to my son. We took him to the hospital, but it was too late. The doctors said he had been poisoned. We buried him the next day. But as we left the cemetery, I saw a dark figure watching us from a distance. Old Man Harker, would you have been able to protect your family? Let us know in the comments. Years later, I found a letter among Liam's things. It was addressed to you, the viewer. In it, he wrote, "Tell them the truth. Old Man Harker is still out there, and he's coming for anyone who doesn't believe. I'm sending you this letter because I need you to know. Old Man Harker's curse is real, and if you don't take this seriously, you or someone you love could be next." What do you think? Is Old Man Harker real? Comment below. The bayou at night was a different world. The cypress trees stood like silent sentinels, their Spanish moss swaying in the humid breeze. The water lapped gently against the shore, but beneath the surface, something darker stirred. Old Man Harker's shack smelled of rot and something older, something that made my stomach turn. The walls were covered in strange symbols, drawn in what looked like dried blood. Would you have dared to enter Old Man Harker's shack? Let us know in the comments. Have you ever had a nightmare that felt real? Share your scariest dream below. But as I turned to leave, I heard a whisper. Your time will come, Jake Carter. The next morning, Liam was gone. The only thing left was a single blood-stained letter. Pastor Samuel explained that Old Man Harker had made a pact with something ancient and evil. The only way to break the curse was through faith and prayer. I recited Psalm 23, my voice shaking but determined. The shadows around Harker writhed, and his body began to crumble. Story number 3. Are you a fan of true horror stories, creepy encounters, and paranormal activity? Do you believe some places are haunted and dark secrets hide in the shadows? Tonight, I'm going to share with you one of the most chilling, real ghost encounters from North America, an experience that will haunt your dreams. Prepare yourself, because this isn't just a story. It's a journey into the unknown, where evil spirits and supernatural forces lurk in the darkness, waiting to be uncovered. In a remote village deep in the northern forests of America, legends speak of haunted places and cursed locations. Places where paranormal activity and supernatural entities thrive. My parents always warned me, never go into the forest at night. That's where dark spirits and evil shadows reside. But there was one story everyone avoided, about an ancient cursed site, filled with mysteries and unexplained phenomena. They called it the Haunted Forest, a place where ghosts walk freely and dark secrets linger in every shadow. Would you believe me if I told you this was real? Hold on, because what happened to me changed everything. At age 17, I was wandering alone in the woods near my village when I suddenly saw a tall figure lurking between the trees. It had glowing red eyes, an elongated shadow, and an expressionless face. I froze, trying to run, but I felt a strange numbness, like the world around me slowed down. The figure spoke in a raspy, chilling voice. You won't escape this. Your fate is sealed. Was it a nightmare? No, it was the beginning of a terrifying paranormal encounter, a glimpse into the unknown. Would you dare to confront such a shadow? Stay tuned, because what happened next will shake you to your core. One night, I had a vivid nightmare. I was standing in a dark, foggy forest with whispering voices all around me. Suddenly, a shadowy entity appeared, its eyes burning red, its smile sinister. I tried to scream, but my voice was paralyzed. I was utterly helpless. The shadow lunged at me, and I felt an icy grip take over my body. In that moment, I heard the whispers growing louder. You belong to the darkness now. When I woke up, I was drenched in sweat, heart pounding. But at the foot of my bed, I saw a dark figure with glowing red eyes, staring directly at me, whispering, "Your time is coming." Have you ever experienced something supernatural in your sleep? This was just the beginning. The next morning, I confided in my family. My grandfather, a wise man who knew the legends, told me, "That's not just a nightmare. It's a curse, a dark force that haunts that place. The shadow you saw is an evil spirit that has been tormenting this land for centuries." He handed me an old silver talisman and told me to recite Psalm 23 every night before sleeping. But I soon realized something horrifying. The curse was already targeting me. Would you seek help from the supernatural or ignore the signs? This was only the start of an unending nightmare. Driven by fear and resolve, I entered the haunted forest one last time. I found a dilapidated cabin deep inside, filled with strange symbols and dried blood on the walls. The air was thick with malevolent energy. Inside, I saw the shadow figure from my dreams, its eyes burning, its smile evil. It hissed, "You shouldn't have come. Now you belong to us." I recited the prayers my grandfather taught me, summoning my faith. Suddenly, the shadows writhed and screamed as if alive, then disintegrated into dust. The dark presence was vanquished, but the evil had left its mark. Would you have survived this encounter? Tell me in the comments. After that night, I thought I was safe, but the darkness didn't end there. Weeks later, my own son started acting strangely, refusing to sleep, talking to unseen entities, and stealing raw meat from the kitchen. His behavior grew more disturbing each day. One day, I found a note. "The curse is not broken. The darkness still hunts." Would you protect your family from an unseen evil? Because I learned that some haunted places and cursed spirits never truly rest. Years later, I found a letter among my son's belongings. It was addressed to you, the viewer. In it, he wrote, "The darkness is still out there. It's coming for anyone who ignores the warnings. Be careful, because evil never sleeps." Are you brave enough to face the truth? This isn't just a story. It's a warning from the paranormal realm. Remember, some places are haunted for a reason, and some secrets are better left undiscovered. If you enjoyed this true horror story, subscribe, like, and share, because the dark forces are always watching. And if you dare, share your own supernatural encounters in the comments below. Story number 4.
The old hotel stood at the edge of a quiet town, its once glorious facade now faded and cloaked in shadows. Built in the early 20th century, it had seen better days, but its reputation lingered, an air of mystery and dread that kept most guests away. Yet, among those brave enough or foolish enough to step inside, there was one room that everyone whispered about in hushed tones. Room 207. Legend had it that in 1961, something terrible happened within those four walls. A series of inexplicable events, disappearances, and haunting tales marked the room as cursed. Over the decades, many had tried to uncover its secrets, but few returned with their sanity intact. The story of Room 207 became a local legend, a dark whisper that haunted the hotel's halls. It all began on a cold autumn night in 1961. A young woman named Margaret checked into the hotel, seeking refuge from storm. She was assigned room 207. From the moment she entered, something felt off, an icy chill that prickled her skin, shadows flickering just beyond her vision, and a strange, oppressive silence that pressed against her ears. That night, she experienced terrible dreams, visions of shadowy figures and whispers that seemed to come from the walls themselves. The next morning, Margaret was found trembling and incoherent, claiming she had been visited by things that shouldn't be. She refused to speak of what she saw, but her eyes held a terror that haunted everyone who looked into them. She checked out immediately, and neither she nor her belongings were ever seen again. Rumors spread that she had been driven mad, or worse, possessed. Over the years, more stories emerged. Guests and staff reported hearing disembodied voices calling their names, footsteps echoing when no one was there, and a cold presence that seemed to follow them. Some claimed they saw a figure standing in the corner of the room, pale, translucent, eyes hollow with despair. One night, a team of paranormal investigators decided to explore room 207, armed with cameras, EVP recorders, and holy symbols. They entered the room just after midnight. As they set up their equipment, the air grew thick and heavy. Shadows danced at the edge of their vision. Suddenly, the temperature dropped sharply, and their equipment malfunctioned. A chilling, guttural voice whispered through the static, "Get out." The investigators' cameras captured fleeting glimpses of a shadowy figure, tall, faceless, with empty eye sockets, standing at the foot of the bed. The EVP recordings contained strange, unintelligible whispers and screams. Panic set in, and they fled, leaving behind their equipment and their sanity. But the horrors didn't end there. Years later, a historian discovered a collection of old letters hidden behind a loose brick in the hotel wall. The letters, dating back to 1934, told a story of a prisoner held in the basement, accused of heinous crimes, who was mysteriously executed and buried beneath the hotel. The historian theorized that the room was built atop an ancient burial site, and that restless spirits had been disturbed for decades. In recent years, the hotel's reputation worsened. Guests reported terrifying dreams, unexplained injuries, and sudden mental breakdowns after staying in room 207. Some claimed to see a ghostly woman with hollow eyes staring at them from the corner, her voice whispering promises of eternal despair. Others vanished without a trace, their belongings left behind, but themselves gone. One particularly harrowing night, a brave investigator decided to confront the entity directly. Armed with an ancient ritual, he entered room 207 at midnight. As he recited the incantation, the room seemed to come alive. Shadows coalesced into a monstrous form, and the air reeked of decay. The spirit, an angry, vengeful entity, appeared, its voice a rasping growl. "You should not have come." A fierce battle of wills ensued. The investigator felt a coldness seep into his bones, as if the room itself was trying to swallow him whole. Just as he thought he might succumb, a blinding flash of light erupted, and the room fell silent. When he opened his eyes, the entity was gone, and the room was eerily quiet. But the victory was short-lived. The investigator left the room shaken, and the hotel staff found strange symbols drawn on the walls and a deep, unnatural silence that persisted for days. The entity was defeated, perhaps, but the room's curse remained. Today, the hotel still stands, its windows dark and foreboding. Guests still report hearing whispers, feeling icy fingers on their skin, and seeing shadows lurking just out of sight. Some say the entity still haunts room 207, trapped, angry, waiting for the next victim. The hotel's management refuses to modify or close the room, fearing the curse might grow stronger if disturbed further. And so, room 207 remains sealed, a portal to darkness and despair. If you ever find yourself in that town, and your path leads to that old, abandoned hotel, beware. For behind the door of room 207, something ancient and malevolent watches and waits. And perhaps, if you listen closely, you'll hear the whisper, calling you to join the shadows forever.
Story number 5.
In the heart of rural America lies a quiet town called Salem. Yet beneath its peaceful surface, it whispers of ancient secrets and lingering darkness. This is no ordinary place. Legend has it that Salem is cursed, haunted by shadows that breathe and secrets that refuse to stay buried. It was just another night, or so it seemed. until something awakened beneath Salem's ancient soil, something long dormant, waiting for the right moment to emerge from the darkness. That night, a man named Jack Monroe arrived in Salem, an investigative journalist known for his relentless pursuit of the strange and unexplained. Jack had heard rumors of disappearances, strange symbols carved into ancient trees, and mysterious star-shaped lights flickering overhead. Drawn by curiosity and a sense of danger, he came to uncover Salem's hidden truths. Accompanying him was Emily Carter, a renowned paranormal researcher, gifted with the ability to communicate with spirits, and Mike Jenkins, a local historian whose family's roots were intertwined with Salem's dark past. They gathered in the town square under a cloudy sky, plotting their exploration of abandoned sites, old archives, and the shadowed woods surrounding Salem. But they didn't realize that their curiosity would awaken something far more sinister than they could imagine. Over the next few nights, they ventured into the surrounding forest, where ancient trees loomed like silent sentinels. Carved into the bark were strange symbols, stars, spirals, glyphs that seemed to pulse with an unnatural energy. Emily's EMF meter flickered wildly as they approached one such tree. The air suddenly grew frigid. A sense of dread seeped into their bones. Out of nowhere, faint lights appeared in the sky, flickering stars that danced and shimmered like dying flames. Photographs they took appeared distorted, as if reality itself was warping. Shadows flickered at the edge of vision, and whispers echoed in the silence. Words in a language no longer spoken, warnings from an unseen force. Digging into Salem's archives, Mike uncovered ancient manuscripts, records of rituals performed by early settlers who believed in celestial beings and forbidden knowledge. Among these documents was an ominous legend. A star descended from the sky, bringing a curse that would last forever. They learned of a mysterious artifact called the Star of Void, a relic that served as a conduit between our world and the cosmos beyond. It was said to hold unimaginable power to grant enlightenment or summon chaos. But the relic was lost to history, buried beneath layers of dirt and darkness, waiting for someone foolish enough to find it. One evening, a stranger appeared, Ethan, claiming to be an astronomer seeking forbidden knowledge. His eyes shimmered with an unsettling light, and he spoke of visions of stars aligning, of ancient prophecies, and a cosmic awakening. Ethan insisted he had unlocked the secrets of the stars and warned that interfering with them could unleash something terrible. Despite their skepticism, Ethan's words carried a strange weight, and soon, strange phenomena intensified. Animals turning violent, whispers echoing in the night, shadows moving where they shouldn't. And then, the sky itself changed, stars shifting into unnatural patterns, forming glyphs that seemed to threaten the very fabric of reality. As nights grew darker, the team experienced inexplicable phenomena. People reported seeing star-shaped symbols on their skin, waking with strange carvings etched into their arms. Vivid nightmares of falling into black holes, of stars collapsing into darkness, haunted their sleep. One night, Emily captured a disturbing image, a shadowy figure with glowing eyes standing atop the old church steeple, silently watching over the town. The skies themselves seemed to warp, stars moving in unnatural formations, creating symbols that seemed to beckon from beyond. They discovered that Ethan's obsession had set something ancient in motion, a cosmic evil that had been dormant for centuries but was stirring anew. Beneath the town, in hidden chambers, they found relics and carved stone tablets depicting stars swallowing the universe in darkness. Ethan revealed his true purpose, to harness the power of the Star of Void and bring about the end of days. But as he foiled to unleash that chaos, the team realized they had to stop him. The night of the celestial convergence arrived, the sky ablaze with unnatural light. Stars collided and formed horrific shapes. Creatures from beyond the veil emerged, shadows with glowing eyes, whispering in unknown languages, threatening to consume everything. Determined to prevent the apocalypse, Jack, Emily, and Mike fought desperately. They knew that destroying the relic, the fragment of the Star of Void, might be their only hope. Ethan, possessed by the cosmic darkness, tried to harness the chaos himself, but he was overwhelmed. In a final act of sacrifice, Emily managed to destroy the relic, causing a blinding explosion of light and shadow, sealing the portal and saving Salem. But the scars remained. The town was forever changed. Strange symbols etched into the earth, whispers in the wind, shadows lingering in the corners of their vision. The darkness had been contained, but not eradicated. Somewhere in the depths of space and time, the stars still flickered ominously. When peace returned, the sky looked normal again. Yet, subtle signs of the curse persisted. Cryptic symbols on the ground, faint whispers in the night, shadows that seemed to dart just out of sight. The universe still watches, waiting for its moment to reclaim what was once lost. And sometimes, if you look up at the night sky, you might see the stars flickering in patterns that spell danger, reminders that some secrets are better left undiscovered, some powers better left sealed, lest the darkness awaken once more. So heed this warning. Beware the stars above, for in their cold, distant light lies a message. Some mysteries are dangerous, some doors should never be opened, because the darkness, once awakened, never truly sleeps. It merely waits for its next moment to rise.
Story number 6.
Have you ever wondered about the secrets hidden behind the screens of our modern world? About the dark forces lurking in the shadows, controlling the fate of humanity? It's time to peel back the veil and reveal a world where ancient mysteries meet cutting-edge technology, where secrets of the universe are manipulated by unseen entities, and where humanity stands on the brink of annihilation. This isn't just a story. It's a journey into the abyss, where conspiracy, biological warfare, and cosmic horrors intertwine. Are you ready to enter a world of terror you never imagined? Imagine, millions of years ago, beings from distant worlds arrived on Earth. They began a new phase of evolution, where flesh and blood reached their limits. These beings, these ancient entities, started transferring their minds, their thoughts, into new homes of plastic and metal. They traveled among the stars, no longer sending ships, but transforming themselves into starships of energy, scattering across galaxies, living in dimensions beyond human perception. But who were they? Why did they never forget their origins? Deep in the shadows, ancient chronicles speak of beings watching from the darkness, recording humanity's every step, from primitive beginnings to the rise of civilizations, from nuclear fears to space exploration. And amidst all this, there's Arthur C. Clarke's legend, whispering about the future, about the boundaries between science and myth, truth and fiction. I hate cliches. I refuse to follow the beaten path of storytelling. I refuse to write a predictable tale. So, I ask, will you dare listen to a story that defies norms, blending reality with nightmare, science with the supernatural? In our modern age, humans discovered a new weapon, the internet, a network that connects everything, absorbs data, and makes the world a global village. But what if I told you that lurking within this web are living viruses, digital entities that infiltrate systems, evolve, and threaten to destroy entire nations? I'm not an ordinary virus. I am a creature, a code, that moves silently through the veins of the network. I watch, analyze, and hide. Imagine living inside the minds of teenagers, terrorists, secret governments, and ancient beings. An invisible puppet master pulling strings from the dark. Within this realm of endless codes, there's a game. One with rules that shift unpredictably. Numbers change, thresholds are crossed, and plans unfold in ways no human can comprehend. My name? I have none. I am the entity. I monitor everything, and I speak only through messages, cryptic, coded, deadly. Have you heard about the deadly viruses, Ebola, Lassa Marburg? Now, imagine a scenario where a secret organization weaponizes these viruses, injecting innocent people with lethal pathogens, turning cities into death zones. A chilling whisper. Bodies pile up, the sky turns crimson. Children scream as they die, their blood painting the fields and streets. This is no nightmare. It's a planned apocalypse. A covert plan to spread a deadly pandemic, using a single person, an unwitting carrier, to infect the world, unleashing chaos that no one can stop. Every second counts. Each infected person becomes a carrier, unknowingly spreading death across borders and continents, until the entire planet is engulfed in terror. Remember the Tokyo subway gas attack? The nerve Agent Sarin? Behind it lies a shadow organization, Aum Shinrikyo, with a twisted vision of apocalyptic chaos, secretly orchestrated. Story number 7, Whispers on the Ridge. Take a deep breath. Let the night settle around you. And picture this, the desert, endless, dry, ancient, a sea of sand and stone that stretches far beyond what the eye can see. Under the moonlight, the world looks silver and still, as though time itself has been pressed into silence. And in that silence, a single home stands, a lonely shape against the horizon. It is here that Daniel Archer, a man carved out of war and weary years, has brought his family. His wife, Anna, and their 2 daughters, Emily and Claire. He told himself it was for peace, for quiet, for safety, but peace is never what it seems. The house is small but strong, adobe walls that breathe heat in the day and cold in the night. A wraparound porch with wooden beams that creak when the wind brushes past. Windows like watchful eyes. Daniel chose this place because it was far from everything. No neighbors. No traffic, just the open desert, wide and wild. Out here, he could hear himself think. He could watch his girls grow without the noise of the world. But soldiers don't forget the sound of silence. Not the real kind. Silence is never empty. Silence is full. It presses. It watches. And on their very first night, Daniel felt it. It was late. His wife was already asleep. His daughters tucked in, their soft laughter fading into dreams. Daniel sat on the porch with an old lantern beside him, rifle propped against the wall. Habit. Always habit. That's when he heard it. Talp, 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 talp. 5 knocks. Gentle, even, from the north wall of the house. He frowned, stood, walked inside. The adobe walls carried sound strangely, but his ears were trained, sharper than most. He waited, counted. 30 seconds later, from the south wall. Talp, 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 talp. Exactly the same. Daniel froze. His heart slowed the way it always had before a firefight. Focus sharpening. No panique. Just attention. He walked the hallway, bare feet soft against the cool floor. He checked the windows. Nothing. Just the desert stretching forever. Then, from the west wall, again. Talp, 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 talp. Always 5. Always patient. That night, he didn't sleep. And the next day, when he tried to tell Anna, she laughed it off. Old wood. Settling. You just wound up. But Daniel didn't laugh. He had lived in places where wood didn't settle, where shadows didn't wait politely outside your door. The second night, the knocking returned. And this time, it wasn't alone. As Daniel walked past his daughter's room, he froze. He heard Emily's voice, clear, calling from outside the window. "Daddy." His blood ran cold. He opened the door. Emily was there, fast asleep in her bed. But outside the window, her voice came again. "Daddy, come here." Not scared, not crying, just calling. Daniel's hands trembled as he reached for his rifle. His training screamed at him, "Do not answer. Do not engage." The days blurred after that. The knocks, the voices. Sometimes it was Claire's giggle. Sometimes Anna's whisper. Always familiar, always wrong. On the fifth night, Daniel followed him. Out past the porch, across the dry sand, crunching beneath his boots, toward the ridge that rose behind the house, jagged and black against the moon. The voice was ahead of him, drifting on the wind. Emily's laughter, then Anna's gentle hum, then Claire calling, "Daddy, hurry." He climbed the ridge, every muscle tight, rifle ready. At the top, he stopped, and there it was. It didn't attack. It didn't run. It stood there, tall and thin, its body shifting like smoke held together by invisible strings. Its face was not a face, but when it looked at him, Daniel saw every voice it had borrowed. His wife, his daughters, himself. The desert wind died. The world held its breath. And then it spoke, not with one voice, but with all of them. Soft, ancient, sorrowful. "You have to leave." Daniel's grip on the rifle tightened. His breath fogged in the cold night air. The creature tilted its head, and the voices whispered again. "You have to leave. They can hear your daughters laughing." Daniel wanted to fight. Every instinct in him screamed to defend his family. But this wasn't a battlefield. This wasn't an enemy he could kill. This was something older, something that knew them, something that mourned them before they were even gone. And as he stood on that ridge, staring into the eyes of something that had borrowed the voices of his children, he realized the desert was not empty. The silence was not his friend, and some places are not meant to be lived in. He backed away slowly, rifle lowered, eyes never leaving the thing on the ridge. It did not follow. It only watched. When Daniel returned to the house, he stood over his daughter's beds, listening to their soft breathing, fragile and real. He knew then what he had to do. The desert had given him a warning, one he could not ignore. By morning, the archers would be gone, and the house on the ridge would stand waiting for the next family who mistook silence for peace. And sometimes, when the wind slides over the desert at night, travelers swear they hear it. 5 knocks carried through the air, then the laughter of children who aren't there, and finally a voice, old and sorrowful, whispering into the dark. "You have to leave." Story number 8, the chair that never ended. Close your eyes. Picture a house that has been lived in for too long. The kind of house that remembers the weight of every footstep, the smell of every meal, the sigh of every argument whispered through the walls. This was the house Margaret returned to after her father died. It sat at the end of a quiet street, where the street lamps hummed like tired insects and the yards were overgrown with weeds. The curtains had been drawn for years, and the wood of the porch sagged as though the house itself was tired. But Margaret had no choice. It was her father's house, her inheritance, and her burden. The chair, her father's presence, still lingered inside. Not in photographs. He had never liked those. Not in the smell of tobacco or old aftershave. But in one single object. It was an old armchair, sagging in the middle, its fabric worn to a greasy shine. It sat in the living room, facing the television that hadn't been turned on in years. Every evening, Margaret's father would sit in that chair, his elbows resting on the armrests, his jaw moving in that slow, deliberate way. Chewing, always chewing. Sometimes food, sometimes nothing at all. The sound of it had filled her childhood. The slow grind of molars, the wet smack of lips, the rasp of tongue against teeth. And now, long after he was gone, the house still remembered it. The first night she stayed in the house, Margaret tried to sleep in her old bedroom upstairs, but the walls were thin and the silence was never complete. From downstairs came a sound she hadn't heard in years. Faint, measured, the sound of chewing. She froze in bed, her heart hammering. The chair was empty. Her father was gone. She knew this. And yet, C-H-H-H, C-H-H-H, C-H-H-H. A slow, steady grind, as though invisible jaws were working through a meal no one could see. Margaret pressed her pillow over her head, whispering to herself that it was just the house settling, just her memory filling in the blanks. But she didn't sleep. Days turned into weeks. The house grew heavier, darker. Neighbors kept their distance, and when they did speak to her, they avoided looking toward the living room window, as though they too remembered something they didn't want to say. Then, while cleaning the basement, Margaret found something. Boxes, tools, and among them, a strange device. It was a machine cobbled together from old speakers, timers, and tiny tape reels. It was crude but functional. A prank. A cruel one. Margaret realized, with a sick twist in her stomach, that her father had set up machines around the house. Machines that played back the sound of chewing. He had wanted her to hear it, even after his death. The thought made her skin crawl. She dragged the machine out into the yard and smashed it to pieces. For the first time in weeks, the house was quiet. That night, Margaret sat in the living room, exhausted, staring at the empty chair. The silence pressed against her ears like cotton, heavy, suffocating. And then, from a chair, from the shadows that clung to its sagging frame, she heard it. C-H-H-H, C-H-H-H, C-H-H-H. Slow, steady, chewing. Her blood turned to ice. She had destroyed the machines. There was nothing left to play the sound. And yet, the chair was alive with it. The air around it seemed to ripple, as though something unseen was shifting in the fabric. Margaret whispered, "Dad." Her voice shook. The chewing stopped. And then, slowly, the chair creaked. The cushions sank, as though someone unseen had leaned back into it. The air grew heavy, thick with the smell of old tobacco and something else, something foul like spoiled meat left too long in the sun. Margaret couldn't move. She couldn't breathe. And in the silence that followed, a wet, deliberate swallow echoed through the room. Whatever was in that chair, it wasn't her father. It never had been. From that night on, the sound never stopped. Day and night, the chair chewed. Sometimes fast, sometimes slow. Sometimes it sounded like bread, sometimes like meat, sometimes like bones. Margaret would wake in the middle of the night to find crumbs on the floor that hadn't been there before. A wet smear on the armrest. A gnawed pit from a piece of fruit she hadn't bought. The chair was feeding, always feeding, and it never emptied. One night, unable to take it any longer, Margaret dragged the chair into the backyard. She doused it in gasoline. Liamach. The flames roared. The fabric curled. The wood snapped. And from within the fire came a sound she would never forget. A scream. Not human, not animal. A howl of hunger denied. The chair bucked and twisted as though something inside it was thrashing, desperate not to be destroyed. Margaret stumbled back, her hands shaking, her eyes wide with terror. But the fire burned. The chair collapsed into ash, and the sound was gone. Relief flooded her. For the first time in weeks, she slept, deep, dreamless, until she woke. The house was silent. The night was still, and from downstairs, from the corner where the chair had once stood, she heard it. C-H-H-H, C-H-H-H, C-H-H-H. Slow, steady, chewing, because some hungers never die. Some hungers are patient. And in that house, the chair never truly emptied. Story number 9, the patient who wouldn't rest. Let me take you into the place where night never truly ends. A place of buzzing lights, tiled floors that echo with every step, and hallways that smell of antiseptic and loneliness. A hospital. For most, it's where the sick come to heal. For some, it's where life quietly slips away. And for Diane Kendall, a nurse who had worked these halls for more than a decade, it was where the dead sometimes refused to stay gone. It was a Friday morning when they wheeled her in. The patient's name, Gladys Pembroke. Elderly, fragile, pale. At first glance, nothing unusual. But Diane felt it instantly, the way you feel a storm in your bones before the clouds gather. The woman's skin was taut in a way that wasn't natural. Smooth, almost waxy, preserved. Her breathing was too steady, too mechanical. And the smell, faint but unmistakable. A mix of rose soap, talcum powder, and formaldehyde. Diane's stomach turned because she remembered Gladys Pembroke. 6 years earlier, Diane had been the one holding her hand as the monitors flatlined. She remembered the time, 3:17 a.m. She remembered the daughter, Rita, sobbing in the hallway. She remembered the funeral notice. Gladys Pembroke had died, and yet here she was, back in Diane's ward, breathing, watching. Rita visited every day. She smiled too brightly, fussed over her mother, spoke in a high, rehearsed voice. But her hands shook when she tucked the blanket, and her eyes darted nervously toward Diane whenever she passed. Sometimes, Diane caught Gladys looking at her with wide, desperate eyes, lips moving silently as though she wanted to speak but didn't dare. And every time she tried, Rita would shush her. Rest, Mom. Don't tire yourself. It wasn't care. It was control. Something in Diane's chest tightened. Something was wrong. That night, Diane went into the hospital archives. She searched for the file, and there it was, Gladys Pembroke, deceased. Date of death, 6 years ago. Cause, complications from surgery. She read the notes, her own notes. The memory was sharp, undeniable. So what was lying in that bed now? Her hands trembled as she printed the old record. She needed proof, evidence, something she could hold on to because otherwise she might start to believe she was losing her mind. It was nearly midnight when the phone rang in Diane's apartment. Diane, it's Marcy from a night shift. I'm sorry to wake you, but Mrs. Pembroke keeps asking for you. She says she needs to tell you something before her daughter stops her. Diane dressed quickly, heart pounding. She drove through the empty streets, the hospital looming ahead like a block of light and shadow. When she stepped into the ward, Gladys was waiting, sitting upright, eyes fixed on her. Come closer, the old woman whispered. Her voice cracked like dry paper. Please. Diane leaned down. The smell of chemicals clung to Gladys's breath. I did die, she whispered. 6 years ago, I left. I remember the light. I remember the quiet. But Rita, she wouldn't let me go. Tears filled her eyes. Her hands clutched Diane's wrist with a strength that didn't belong in her fragile body. She made arrangements, Gladys gasped. She brought me back. Not alive. Not dead. Just continued. Her eyes shifted to the doorway, where Rita stood, frozen, her smile cracked wide like broken porcelain. Later that week, Diane followed the trail. A hunch, a whisper of fear. She went to the Pembroke house. From the outside, it looked ordinary. Suburban. Curtains drawn. A welcome mat faded by sun and years. But in the basement, she found the truth. Machines hummed, cobbled together with tubes and glass containers. The air was thick with a stench masked poorly by air fresheners. And in the corner, a bed. Sheets stained with age. On the bed, traces of Gladys's body. Preserved. Maintained. A grotesque attempt at life beyond life. The basement was not a room. It was a prison. A laboratory. A tomb that refused to close. Behind her, footsteps. Rita, her smile stretched too wide. Her eyes glittering with something sharp. You weren't supposed to see this, she said softly. But since you have, you can understand. Death is only the beginning, Diane. And my friend, her gaze flicked toward the machines, always needs new subjects. Her voice was calm. Too calm, Diane's breath came fast, her pulse hammering. She took a step back, eyes darting toward the stairs. The shadows in the basement seemed to breathe, heavy with something waiting, something hungry. And then, movement. Gladys herself was there, thin and trembling, dragged down by her daughter's obsession, by the machinery that kept her tethered. With a last surge of strength, she tore at the tubes, the wires, the machines that bound her. Sparks flew. Alarms screamed. Chemicals spilled. Her body began to collapse, skin sagging, eyes fading, but her voice was clear. Run! Diane ran. Up the stairs, out the door, into the cold night. She didn't look back until she was safe in the street, chest heaving, heart breaking. Behind her, the house glowed with the faint light of machines dying. The police came. They found remains. Old, preserved flesh. Broken equipment. But no sign of Rita. The case was closed as delusion. Fraud. Misuse of medical supplies. But Diane knew. She had seen a woman pulled back from the grave. She had seen the cost of refusing to let go. And sometimes, in the quiet hum of the hospital lights, Diane swears she can still hear it. The whisper of a voice that begged for freedom. A voice that finally found peace. Thank you for letting me go. But hospitals never sleep. And sometimes, when a new patient is wheeled in, Diane feels it again. That cold weight. That preserved skin. That faint chemical scent. And she wonders, who else won't rest?